Welcome to Mimi Stories 256. Please like, subscribe, and comment. A like means support. Let's continue with our next chapter of The Price of Her Belonging. Jenny's face was contorted in rage, her piercing glare radiating fury, every line of her expression. A warning that mercy was not an option. Adoria's breath hitched, her knees threatening to buckle beneath her. "Jenny, you don't mean that," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jenny leaned in, her face inches from Adoria's. Her tone softened, but it was no less chilling. "Oh, but I do. Think about his family, Adoria. What would a poor girl like you even do there? You don't belong in his world. You never did. Ethan was mine from the start. You did your part, now back off." Adoria's vision blurred as tears spilled down her cheeks. She stared at Jenny, the woman she had once idolized, the sister she had trusted. But now, all she saw was cruelty. Calculated, deliberate cruelty. Jenny straightened, brushing a strand of hair from her face as if the conversation had bored her. "You have two choices," she said lightly, her tone almost cheerful. "Leave Ethan or I'll make sure you lose him. And everything else you care about." Adoria's voice cracked as she tried to speak. "Jenny, Think it over," Jenny interrupted, turning toward the door. She paused in the doorway, casting one last glance over her shoulder. "But don't take too long. I'm not a patient woman." Jenny turned and looked at her, before exiting the room as she gave Adoria a smile which wasn't a smile, a playful yet dangerous curve of her lips. "You really should think about that window," she said casually, gesturing toward it. "It would solve all your problems. And mine." The door clicked shut behind her, and her laughter echoed faintly down the hall. Adoria sank to the floor, her tears falling freely now. The pale moonlight streaming through the window seems harsher, illuminating the storm raging within her. Ethan, Jenny, the window. The choices felt unbearable, and yet she knew she had to make one. She couldn't help but remember the first time she met with Jenny on that fateful day. The shabby house groaned under the weight of years of neglect, its peeling paint curling like tired petals. A single flickering bulb swayed slightly in the breeze from a cracked window, casting restless shadows across the walls. On the splintered floor, 8-year-old Adoria sat pressed against the side of her mother's rickety bed. Her small hands clung desperately to the fraying blanket, her face streaked with tears. "Mama," Adoria whimpered, her wide, tear-filled eyes fixed on her mother's pale, sweat-covered face. "Are you sure you're okay?" Her mother, Edith, gave a faint smile, though her trembling lips betrayed her struggle. She brushed a damp strand of hair from her face, her breaths shallow and uneven. "I'm fine, my darling," she rasped, her voice cracking under the strain. "You should sleep. By morning, I'll be good as new." Edith's words were followed by a violent cough that shook her frail body, the sound sharp and jarring. Adoria flinched, her tiny frame trembling as fresh tears welled in her eyes. "But you're not fine, Mama," she said, her voice cracking. "You're so hot and the way you're breathing scares me." Edith reached out a shaky hand, resting it lightly on Adoria's cheek. Her touch was warm, too warm. "Don't cry, my love," she whispered, though her words faltered. "I'm just a little tired. That's all." She smiled again, but it was weak, hollow. Adoria's little hands tightened around the blanket as a sob escaped her. "I should call Aunt Jessica," she said suddenly, her voice rising with desperation. She jumped to her feet, darting to the door with urgency. "She can take us to the hospital." Her small hands fumbled with the rusted latch of the door, her heart racing. The cool night air seeped through the edges, prickling her skin. Outside, the neighborhood was eerily silent. The cracked pavements and crumbling houses seemed to stretch endlessly into the shadows, abandoned and forgotten. The moonlight bathed the street in a pale glow, but the world beyond the doorway felt heavy, almost alive, pressing down on her. "Adoria, wait!" Her mother's weak voice broke through the stillness, stopping her in her tracks. "Dear, the people are asleep." "We can't disturb them," Edith wheezed, her coughing intensifying. "I'll be fine, I promise." Adoria hesitated, her small frame silhouetted in the doorway. Her breath came in shallow gasps as she turned back to look at her mother. Her heart ached at the sight. Edith was gasping for air, her chest rising and falling with effort. The light from the bulb flickered erratically, making her mother's fragile frame appear even more ghost-like. Adoria's resolve snapped. "No!" she cried out, her voice breaking. "You're not fine, Mama. You're lying. I can't let you die. Her sobs burst forth, raw and heart-wrenching, piercing the suffocating quiet of the night. They reverberated through the walls, trembling with her fear and desperation. Edith closed her eyes, her heart heavy with guilt, as her daughter's cries echoed like a plea she couldn't ignore. With a deep, pained breath, she forced herself to sit upright. Every movement was agony, her body screaming in protest. But she couldn't bear to see her little girl in such pain. "All right, my stubborn girl," Edith said, her voice trembling with exhaustion but laced with determination. "We'll go." She reached for the edge of the bed, using it to steady herself as she stood. Her knees buckled slightly, but she held firm, her love for Adoria giving her strength. "We'll find help." Adoria ran to her mother's side, wrapping her tiny arms around her. "Thank you, Mama," she whispered through her tears, her voice trembling with relief. As the two stepped into the night, the air felt heavier, colder. The streets stretched before them, deserted and uncaring. But Adoria's small hand was clasped tightly in her mother's. Together, they began the slow, uncertain walk toward the faint hope of salvation, each step a battle against the weight of the darkness surroundings. The mother and daughter stepped out into the chilling night, the little girl clutching a small bag of essentials, while her mother dragged her feet, each step a slow, labored effort. Adoria's heart ached as she trailed a few paces behind, watching her mother's frail form struggle forward. The old dirt road stretched endlessly before them, shrouded in darkness except for the faint glow of the moon. Adoria glanced at the distant horizon, wishing for something, anything that could bring hope. "Adoria," her mother rasped, her breath shallow and uneven. "Come sit close, my dear. The cold, it's too much." Adoria quickly dropped the bag and hurried to her mother's side. Her small hands reached for her mother's trembling ones, holding them tightly as they both sank to the ground by the roadside. "I'm fine, Mom," she whispered, though her voice trembled. "Don't worry. Someone will come. Someone will really come." She repeated the words, her tone more like a prayer than a statement, as though trying to convince herself just as much as her mother. A faint smile tugged at the corners of her mother's pale lips. "You always have hope," Edith murmured weakly, her voice laced with pride despite the strain. "Never lose that, my love. Let it always be the adrenaline that drives you." The sentence ended in a fit of coughing that racked her frail body, leaving her gasping for air. "Stop talking!" Adoria interrupted, her voice breaking with emotion. "Don't say things like that. You're staying with me, okay? I don't need anything else." Her gaze darted nervously to the road as she added, barely above a whisper, "Just one car, please. Just one car. Stop for us." The older woman's hand reached up weakly to touch her daughter's cheek. "Come on, dear," Edith said, her voice broken but still trying to soothe. "You've done your best. If no car comes, it's not your fault. Stop it!" Adoria's voice was sharper than she intended as she swiped at her tears. "Stop saying such things, Mom. We are not giving up." Her small hands clenched into fists. "Someone will stop. They have to. They just have to." For a moment, the only sound was the rustling of leaves in the cold night air. And then faintly, the rumble of an engine reached Adoria's ears. Her head shot up, her heart leaping with renewed hope. "There's a car," she exclaimed, scrambling to her feet. She shaded her eyes with her hands, squinting down the road. "Mom, it's another car." But as the headlights pierced the darkness, Adoria's breath hitched. The car wasn't slowing down. It was speeding straight toward them. "Thank you for sharing this moment with me. If this story stirred something in you, a like or a comment goes a long way. And subscribing means you'll never miss the next chapter. Until then, stay gentle, stay curious, and keep the stories close.